Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I am Judy Nathans.
And over here, I'm Robert Winters. How are you? So
We're still,
I
we're still here. Okay,
we're still here,
so
and it's still March 21st, one
yeah,
full day into spring,
yes, yes,
which is
yes,
pretty good.
yes.
Now,
So,
last week,
right,
there
it's a
was
round
a
table,
roundtable city council meeting on
hmm
Monday, the 13th,
right?
specifically about to present some of um,
Findings,
the kind of executive
yes,
summary type
yes.
version
The
of the.
shorter version of report from the CTC Technology and Rebel. I love that Rebel.
Right. So it was on the topic of municipal broadband, and
Right.
there was some more stuff as part of the title, you know,
Yes.
you know, proposals and ideas and what have
Yeah.
you. Right. And
Yeah, there's some very technical stuff in there. CAPEX, APEC, whatever. I
yeah,
mean,
when I was at a Porter Square meeting about this, people started using the word
oh, right,
capex, and I was going like, "Oh, please don't ask me the quiz question. What's a
right,
capex?
right. Well,
Is that
before
something you
you,
put on a guitar?"
right. So yes, you were asked to talk at that meeting
Yeah,
by
it's
the Porter
it's
Square Neighbors Group, right?
yeah. So I mean, just a little background on this is
Yeah.
so the initial advocacy for municipal broadband, I tend to associate with people like Saul
Oh,
Tannenbaum,
sure. And
and
Susan
then
Fleischman. It was like at least 4 years ago, right? The Broadband Task Force.
right, but
Yeah, yeah,
but actually mentioning Susan Fleischman,
yeah.
former executive director of
Yes. Right.
Cambridge Community Television,
Yeah.
um, you know, let me just say this right up
Yeah.
front, is
Okay.
that to whatever degree, I mean, the revenues that support CCTV
Right.
in large part come from, in addition to donations and other
Right.
sources, come
Right.
from revenues from
The
cable TV
cable.
franchise.
Hmm.
And to whatever degree, like for example, I get from Comcast a combination package of cable TV,
Triple
internet
play. Triple
internet
play.
access,
Yeah.
and phone.
Yeah.
Well, my
Me too.
internet access and my
Yeah.
phone service do not pay a dime to support CCTV. It's only the portion
That's
that's
right. Cable
attributable
TV.
to cable
That's right.
TV, of which a percentage of that then goes
Right.
to support
Right.
community access television.
Right.
Whatever degree you're moving away from cable TV
Yeah.
toward internet-based everything,
Right.
and that includes, I believe, help me out if I'm wrong
Yeah.
here, but
Okay.
to
I'm
whatever
not sure.
degree
I
you
continue.
you
Yeah.
quote cut the cable,
Yeah.
but then subscribe to various streaming options,
Yeah.
which you can do via the
Mhm.
internet,
Right.
that then you're cutting off a revenue source for things like
Yeah.
CCTV as well. Not that that should be the
Right.
sole
Well,
guiding
no, of course not.
principle,
And
but
and the city has been giving money to CCTV, which they well should, because I think they do a whole lot more than the cable TV office.
right,
But
but
that's another story. But I guess it's been less, you said, in the last
yeah,
few years.
so the arrangement there
Yeah.
is that because I don't know that the city basically is a pass-through device. Comcast
Right.
gives to the city, then passes it to support
True. Right.
CCTV.
So
But
they're not giving more than that, but they do contract for some services to
that's
CCTV.
exactly the
So
right
is
way to
that where
say
the
it.
money's coming from
Yeah,
then?
so there was
Okay.
various PSAs and things that the
Right.
city puts
But
out
also
that.
they ask them to record certain things because I don't, you know,
Right. So now, to whatever degree you start transitioning more away from TV
right.
revenue, I think the city needs to start to be a little bit more
Public
creative
access. Right. They're going
about.
to have their own public
Yeah,
access.
and I hope that that's part of the conversation
Sure.
as moving forward with
Well, so
about
far I haven't seen that mentioned in anything.
right.
I mean, in
But
fact, the only, well, go ahead. Yeah.
it'll be a long process, So anyway, the idea is
Yes.
so what's the name of Upgrade Cambridge or something is the name of
Upgrade Cambridge is
is
the
it Upgrade? I got it right. Wow, that's good.
yeah,
Uh,
activist group that is kind of
yeah,
following from the broadband. Yeah.
right. And most city councilors basically got on board with this.
Yeah.
Whether it's a political decision or whether it's
Yeah.
a sincerely held
Well,
belief, I don't know. But
they want free internet access and all.
well, I
I
mean, the
mean,
thing is
they want it to be very cheap to everybody.
right, but it's not so clear that that
Yeah.
works at any
No.
level to do it that way. So
Well,
this study
yeah.
came out, and again, I'm not. It's funny. Even though I was asked to be a panelist with the Porter Square Neighbors
Yeah.
Association, I will say that Paul Toner was another panelist. You
Yeah.
know, this is on this specific topic of
Right.
municipal broadband. This was
Yeah.
after the meeting last Monday.
Right.
In other words, fellow John Clenson, who is actually one of the early architects of a lot of components of what we think of as the internet today, back when his affiliations
Yeah.
with
That's
MIT years and
amazing.
years
Yeah.
ago. So,
Yeah.
you know, you don't get
He
more
know,
expert than
he
that.
knows what he's doing.
Right.
I
I
wonder if
saw
he has cable TV.
probably, I don't know. But I saw my role more as the
Yes.
somewhat ignorant
And all, like, or the consumer
consumer.
of,
Yeah,
the
I
consumer.
saw
Right.
myself as I'm
That's
going to
good.
speak
Yeah.
from the point of view of a person who just
Right.
pays a bill to Comcast, probably,
Right.
and I'm not particularly satisfied with what I
Right.
get.
Right.
So
Right.
what, what in the
What's the
various
alternative? Right.
alternatives that the city is proposing,
Right.
what does this translate in terms of me personally?
Sure.
Will it
Yeah.
cost me more? Will it cost me less? Will I get something
Yeah.
for free? If my
What will I get?
Right.
That's
So
basically.
one of my biggest questions is that
Yeah.
to whatever degree I still watch some television, even though
Yeah.
there may be, as Bruce Springsteen once sang, there's 57 channels and there's nothing on. Now there are
Yeah.
457 channels and
Well,
there's nothing on.
well, that's for you because you don't
Yeah.
stream other stuff. I mean, I get it all, but well,
Right. But the streaming is
I,
actually, that's internet stuff. That's
I
not
know, but
cable.
no, I know that, but I get Hulu, which is an app that I can get through, my TV. Anyway,
Right. So
Netflix,
my
Hulu.
question is,
Yeah.
for, basic question was, okay, so if the city drops, total cost they were estimating, and I think they're lowballing it at 200 million, 194 million.
194 million, and the city would put up
Yeah.
150. Those
Yeah.
numbers are so confusing anyway.
Well,
but
I always like to
yeah,
say that, that sounds
yeah,
really great, but then when
yeah.
you realize that you actually have to dig a trench into a lot of people's houses in order, because
But
they
that's
have,
part of it. That is
yeah,
part of
but
it.
it's sort of like when they did the big dig in Boston. It's like once you actually
Oh,
start putting a shovel in the
it
dirt, you
went up
go,
another 20,
yeah, yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah. It's amazing how fast things can jump. But be that as it may, so the city would then put up, again, it would probably, I'm guessing now, they would probably partner with some other entity.
Well, they presented 4 models, and if you look at the report, and I thought 2 and 3 were the preferable ones. I looked more thoroughly at the report, which is 165 pages, and everyone can read it. It's 2 and 4. So the 4th one is a private whatever. It's a P3. It's what a lot of cities do. I guess number 3 would be unusual because Cambridge is smaller, but number 2, but basically you have to partner with someone. You can't just run
Right.
it all on your own.
Well, so, right. And with that, then there would be some of the capital investment would come from the partner, and some would come from tax revenue, just city support, right?
And right. I mean, there's the public monies versus private. It got into all of that, but I think the main thing is that you want to be careful of your risk. And I think the models that were less risky, but maybe not as much control was number 4. I don't know. But
one of the analogies that I spoke
Yeah.
of at the Porter Square group,
yeah,
which is not related specifically to municipal broadband or cable or internet or anything like that, but it
Yeah.
has to do with like the Cambridge Hospital. So
oh, right.
once
you
upon a
mentioned-
time,
right,
Cambridge City Hospital was effectively within the umbrella of city government.
Right.
So if you work for the hospital, you work for the city, you were on the
Right.
city payroll.
right.
And to whatever degree the hospital industry itself just fundamentally had a lot of risk in it, so
Right,
you
that's
can
right.
suffer losses.
Sure.
In some years, you may have to
Mhm.
become very much dependent on free care pool from,
Right.
from federal and state monies just to keep afloat.
Yeah.
This is sort of an anchor, dragging down the city's own financial stability potentially. So they chose back 20 plus years ago when Tim Toomey was in the legislature to they help shepherd the process through to create the Cambridge Health Alliance. And what they did is they essentially spun off Cambridge Hospital operations
Okay.
into an entity that was external to the city, but which much of the leadership was still appointed by the city.
So
But
they had some input, but not.
Not an absolute day-to-day control, right?
And what kind of monies do they get from that?
So the city doesn't. It's not like the city pays just a relatively minor subsidy for
I
public
see.
health commission
I see.
purposes.
Okay.
But basically, the hospital network has to stand on its own, and it's operated very much. It's not like the city manager is making executive decisions whether to
Right.
buy up another hospital to grow the
Well, that's
network
good
or
because
things
that's
like
not their
that.
business either. I mean, and just like the
Well,
city, we don't do
we'll see it, but that's
broadband necessarily.
well, that was the point of the analogy,
Exactly. Right.
is that
Yes.
so if the general trend in the last few
Yes.
decades has been for
Mhm.
cities like Cambridge to spin off something that's basically best operated with some
By the people that know how to do
semi-autonomy.
it. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even if there's a strong connection, I mean, that would be the
Sure.
way to go.
Right.
So to whatever degree, I mean, right now, I as an individual just signed a contract with Comcast. No, city's not involved in the least, right?
Mhm.
So if in the future, the city were to deploy, this, pretty expensive, it's pretty serious thing.
Well,
Maybe
they
it's
would
higher
then,
quality. I don't know.
right, but well, it
I
would be faster,
presumably.
but they would need people like you and me to subscribe to make it viable.
Right, so they make reference to the take rate, I think was hearing the
Exactly.
phrase was like
Right.
what percentage of,
40%. Yeah. Right.
yeah, so what percentage of current customers or current
Right.
residents would subscribe to this service? And
Probably everybody under 35 that doesn't drive a car and is a vegetarian. No, I'm only kidding. That
well,
doesn't watch TV
right, we'll see, but so that
or they
becomes
stream everything. Yeah.
one of the essential questions for me was is
Yeah.
if I'm paying 200 something dollars to Comcast right
Yeah.
now,
Right.
and I said, okay, I'd like to give up I found
Right.
this out myself. I said, I
Yeah.
want to give up the phone service. And
Right.
it turned out if I wanted to use this UMA device in order to
Yeah.
phone service,
Yeah.
I ended up, the net change in my bill was that I
Yeah.
paid more.
Yeah. Well,
So I said, all right,
all
let's
right.
not do
Well,
that.
Robert, don't use yourself as an example
No. But
because
the thing is that
unlike other people, you do not have a cell phone. And if you did, you
I
probably wouldn't
understand.
even need the landline.
All right, so
So,
the phone is somewhat irrelevant in this
okay.
discussion, but the question then is that if I said, okay, well, this is great, the
Right.
city's spinning out this really nice high speed,
Yeah.
and it's symmetric, meaning you could upload as fast as download. Now, by the
Okay.
way, as was pointed out at our Porter Square meeting for
Yeah.
the by John Clinton, was that
Yeah.
the average person in the city probably doesn't need that level of
Exactly.
speed, and they certainly
That's right.
probably doesn't need that level of speed for uploads versus downloads. So
That's
the
right.
fact that it's symmetric is probably completely meaningless to most
Yeah.
people. But then again, we
Although
don't know how
small businesses, you see a
small
lot of
businesses might be
could
different.
use that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
there should be levels of that. But you're right. But I think the main thing is that someone like me, I might still go with Xfinity because I watch the NCAA basketball, for instance. All the women's games are on ESPN, ESPN2, whatever. I want to watch that, and I want to just turn on my TV and watch it. And I'm gonna have to have a separate thing if I want to do that. So,
Right.
and I can
So
afford to pay a little more, so I would do that. But I just think the average person, and we have time to, hopefully before this all goes out, it doesn't really realize that. They don't.
so these are some
You
of the
know?
important questions I think
Sure.
that need to
Yeah.
be asked.
Right.
And many of the people who were the advocates were, and I'm not saying this as a dig, but they're largely coming from a particular slice of the population, which is not necessarily typical of the person who's necessarily watching
What
the basketball
advocate?
games.
When you
Well, the
mean
people
that?
with Upgrade Cambridge,
Oh, yeah, yeah. No,
you know,
they're
so they're
right. I mean,
people who are
they're
like,
streaming, they're doing that. They probably don't even watch a lot of. I mean, they're busy creating good stuff. I don't know what
right.
they're doing, but
So I mean, if you were an employee of
yeah,
Google or a former systems manager at Tufts University,
yeah,
for example, you might have
yeah,
a perspective that is
yeah,
different than somebody who
yeah.
just wants to watch
Right.
South Park, the new South Park
Yeah,
that's coming on tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, like
yeah.
me. Okay,
Right.
so there's my priorities,
Right.
right?
But
I like to
also,
see Red Sox games. I'd like to watch South Park.
right.
I would
But
love
there's
to see some old movies.
but the
But
only reference in this whole report to anything to do with that, and they call it video services, was this study, this random survey they did, which I question, which was sent out to 5,000 people around the city based on income, where they figured that was, it covered the city. And they got 602 responses back out of 5,000. And out of that, 66%, which is about 400 and something, said, yeah, we want a broadband system and we'd be willing, even if it required a tax subsidy. But when you look at this, it said, they asked whether there is so many, they said this new ISP providing video and phone services is not a significant motivator for most respondents.
Right. There
And
you go.
said that's not at all important, 56%, slightly important, 13, while another 70% said offering video and phone services is moderately important. So that's just, all right, so that's 30%, but that's just based on 402 responses.
Right. But I think the kinds of questions that will
Yeah.
have to be asked will
Yeah.
be much more,
Oh,
you know,
more,
kind of closely,
more-
really basic questions like ones I'm
exactly.
suggesting. So like
Right.
how, like if I still want to watch TV and I still
Right.
have to sign a contract with Comcast for cable
Yeah.
television, even if I get my internet through the city,
Yeah.
what
Right.
will be the net change in terms of quality and cost?
Right.
You know, it's real
Right.
simple questions like that.
I know.
And none of these questions
I
address
know.
that. They were very much sort of
I know.
industry centered, industry
Well, because
centric
I don't think they're at that
questions.
level yet. And like I said, and I sent a letter, you know, to the council and whatever, and saying that the last I looked, like Concord, Mass, which again owns their own power plant, which is very important. A lot of these cities that have done it own their own utility. You have to still contract with Xfinity
Yeah.
to get to. So I'm just saying there's a lot of things to work out.
Right. So I'm, you know, my attitude, and it's exactly what I said to the Porter
Yeah.
Square group. I
Yeah.
said, go ahead, convince me. You know,
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
absolutely, I am
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
eager to be convinced.
Right,
that
because
this is
you
the right
especially are
step
getting a
forward.
raw deal. I mean, I know we talked about your,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
as much as I am.
No, and you know, and
Yeah.
it's also it's sort of easy to hate Comcast because they have made
Yeah.
it pretty easy sometimes. And even
Sure.
if in fact at times I say I'm pretty satisfied with what I'm getting,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you know, but it's still, you know, my, you know, your natural reaction is to say, screw them, right? You know,
Let,
um,
let
but
me
I don't
ask you,
know.
you do a lot of uploading stuff, right? In your work, do you find, are you comfortable with the speed you get?
I think for the
Do you have,
most part I
yeah,
am.
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
It might be nicer if I didn't get the occasional little, you know, blurred speech
Okay.
because of some internet
All
lag.
right.
But
Okay.
for the most part, that doesn't happen that often.
Hmm. Right.
The only time I have to do any serious upload is when I take the recording of this program
Oh, right.
on
That's
a
true.
Tuesday
Yeah.
night and upload it
Right.
to
Takes a little longer. Yeah.
YouTube. Right.
Okay.
You know, but other than that, I don't do it that much. When I'm in the summer school or actually next fall, there's
Yeah.
good, well, at least one of my courses I will do in Zoom. And I want to be, you know, to whatever degree I can have some rock solid guarantee that class is not going to be canceled because of an
Right.
internet issue.
Yeah.
I would, you know, I'm always looking for a more robust system
Right.
just to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. But
Right.
honestly, it hasn't
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, I
that's
don't
good.
think we've ever had an interruption in any of the classes
Yeah.
I've taught ever since COVID kicked in.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Right.
so I guess I have to say I'm reasonably satisfied, but I would love to have a little lower cost.
Yeah.
But it's so far, and again, please, everybody, convince me.
Okay. All right. So let's leave this, but there's the other thing. I sent this to you, and I had that it said that we'd have to pay $20 per month. They're willing to pay $20 per month for 10 years to a temporary fee to cover construction costs. That's something new. I didn't see that. Is that on top of what they paid for the? Did you see? That's page 74. So people pay attention because I don't know what that meant.
You know,
But-
I assumed that was a sort of a sly way of saying, would you object to, you know, even something like your taxes being a little bit higher in order to
yeah,
pay
but
for
that's a
the,
lot. $20 more, and then they're saying $70 would be sort of the base for most people.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, anyway,
a lot to look at. So let's
right.
go. Yeah,
Right. The bottom line for me basically is let's make sure that we really start asking some of the questions
exactly.
from a consumer point of view in terms
Consumer
of,
point of view. Thank you.
am I going to
Yes.
get something better than what I have currently? Is it going to
Yeah.
cost me more? Is it going to cost me less?
And people over 30. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
There's still
Exactly.
some of us out there.
Right. All right.
right.
Now, one other thing I want to mention again,
Yeah.
I want to speak just a little bit about some of the ongoing process about the city charter.
Oh, well, that's
Right.
important because there's that special.
All right. So
meeting
tomorrow
too.
there's a
Yes.
special meeting of the Cambridge City
3
Council.
o'clock.
where the
right.
charter review committee is to present to the council. And I believe it's because it's part of the agenda materials that they are
Yes,
seeking a 6 months extension.
that's right.
Normally, they would have to have a report to the council by
By
June
July,
30th of
June
this year.
30th, right?
And for a few eager beavers on the council who I think are really wanting to change the charter for whatever purposes, selfish or otherwise,
Yeah,
I think they were kind of wanting to get something earlier so that they could propose changes to put on a municipal ballot this November.
that's
So there,
crazy.
I
That's
think it is
crazy.
crazy,
It's
but
just too soon.
right, but but
Too
ultimately this
political, too
it is
political,
highly
highly
political.
political.
Absolutely. So to whatever degree, I mean, well, so apparently they say they're going to seek an extension till this end of December
Well,
of
they're
this year.
right, and I'd be curious to see how the city
So
council
any
responds to
ballot
that.
question would then have to roll over to the next election. So the next
Or
election
be a
cycle,
special election.
or they could hold a special election if
I
they were
think
so
that's more
inclined.
likely because then you don't have all the politicking of the candidates going on, but you'd have it,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
So anyway, I don't know what's going to come of that. I
Yeah.
mean, I may tune in or show up if I can show up.
Oh, I'm gonna
Hopefully not
tape it.
everything is in
Yeah,
Zoom.
I'm gonna tape
But
it.
it's a matter of some interest. And I might as well
Sure.
say right now
Right.
that John Pitkin,
Yay.
myself,
Yep.
and we have basically the voices behind a lot of imagery. We're actually producing what I think will be a pretty good quality video on the history of the Cambridge Charter
Yes.
from town until Plan E. So basically the 1846 charter,
Mhm.
all the intervening years. It's actually a lot of good story in there, by the way. So this is not
Yeah.
just cold stuff. It's a lot of good history.
Sure.
And we've dealt with people at the Cambridge, Alyssa Pacey up at the Cambridge Room and the Cambridge Public
Mhm.
Library, and Charlie Sullivan from the Historical
Yeah.
Commission. So we did a lot of background work on this, and I think people are going to like it. But 1846 charter, 1891 charter, 1915 charter, and the 1940 Plan E. We will
Mhm.
do other episodes in the
Mhm.
future on Plan E forward and others as
Yeah.
well. But I hope this is be a good educational video just to give some of the background on how did we get to where we are today, that people will appreciate. Jim Browdy actually did some voiceovers as well with
Mhm.
us. So
Okay.
but I hope people will look forward to that. And I was going to mention that in conjunction with the fact that we were doing the last of our voiceovers today over at CCTV. On the
Yeah.
way back, we said, we still need an image, a particular image from back in the 1840s. And we put in a request to the city for it, and now we're just waiting. I said, well, you walking by City Hall? I said, yeah, okay, come with me. We went in there. And I wanted to say some very, very nice words about the city clerk's office.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, our city clerk is Diane LeBlanc, and Paula
Mhm.
Crane has been in there, deputy city clerk, Lori Lopez, Nicole Irwin, and many other people in there who have been today. I got to say, today in particular, it was like a party. And then, they said, well, what do Diane said, what do you need? And I said, well, we'd like something like some birth and death records from like the 1840s. And she
Wow.
just turns to some staff, says, go down there and go get that. A few minutes later, they're up there with these original documents.
Wow.
And, my patron saint is a one-time
Yes.
city clerk, Lucius Page, who wrote the history of Cambridge
Oh,
back in
wow.
1877 and is a real source book for a lot of what we
Huh.
were looking into. So they brought up documents signed by Lucius Page,
Unbelievable.
originals. And,
Yeah.
so bless you, city clerk's
Yeah.
office. You were very kind to us. And I've also very much offered my services to help them in any of the more recent paths in there.
What are you hoping people will get? I mean, if it only goes up to what our current charter is, are you trying to show why we have the current charter?
Yeah, I think right. And so
Yeah.
this is not something that's drenched in opinion. There's none at all. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
it's
fact.
more
Yeah.
from the point of view of a teacher teaching about local history. But
Okay.
one of the things that I felt was a deficiency in the way the Charter Review Committee was doing, and they make very clear, we are not an expert group. We are just a
Oh,
random group
clearly.
of,
Yeah.
citizens, just basically offering impressions more than anything.
Yeah.
But I felt right at the beginning that they should have started off with a much more
Deeper
thorough
history. Yes.
understanding
Yeah.
about how did we, when we moved from town to city, when we moved from city to, a different form, one with a stronger mayor form,
Mhm.
You know, when in 1915 we dispensed with the Board of Aldermen and went to an even stronger mayor, and then
Hmm.
ultimately leading up to the reasons why you did all of these things. I want to really make that point in a strong
Yeah.
way, that
Yeah.
people didn't change charters just for the fun of it. You know,
Yeah.
they did it
There
because
was
it was
reason.
compelling need.
So you
And
saying
I
that
want,
they haven't done that? They haven't done that deep dive in the beginning? I mean, you
no, I
followed all
think
these
there
meetings,
was
but
a presentation from the Collins Center that did sort of, like you might call it,
an
the
overview.
3-minute drill,
Okay.
basically, that did that.
Yeah.
But you know, a 3-minute drill that says, well,
Yeah.
then they did this and then they did that, doesn't actually
No,
provide
it doesn't go
context.
into what. No, you're right.
Yeah, so to whatever
Oh,
degree
good.
we
That's
had a
great.
mission here, it was to provide a little bit of
Good.
context about how we came
Great.
from a town of 12,000 people
Mhm.
to a full-blown city, you know, with infrastructure needs and management and
Yeah.
issues of political patronage over the years and all of
Yeah.
the things that led up to how we got to where we are. It
Yeah.
is quite honestly pretty remarkable that the current planning charter has
Survive.
persisted
Yeah.
more or less unchanged for 80 years, you know, and people may say, well, it's time to change it, all right? But, you know, that'll be, we'll get into that in another, we'll produce another program about that as well.
Good.
But anyway, I hope it's something that people will actually appreciate
Well,
and
I just,
enjoy.
yeah, I mean, I just, watched the last one that they had just because I hadn't really watched any meetings. And frankly, I was a little disturbed by what I thought was some lack of knowledge of even other towns and forms of government, or that they just think mayor versus, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't very assured of
My,
this
my,
group.
and again,
So,
I'm not trying to dig on them here really, but
no,
my
yeah,
real concern is that, you know, they're basically just tossing around impressions, and then a few
yeah,
select people, some
yeah,
perhaps affiliated with some city councilors, are sort of
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
sort of be the
yeah.
puppeteers who are trying to
Mm.
influence to get some recommendations that some city councilors might want as their outcome.
They
So
shouldn't be involved,
no,
frankly.
I really think
I
that
mean,
this should have from
just
the
conflict
get-go
of
been
interest.
completely
Yeah,
independent of
yeah.
it, of all of that. But you know,
Okay, all right.
that's
Well,
not the hand we were
we've
dealt.
got
So
to end soon. So
all right,
there's no city council meeting next week, right? I think
that
their
is right. But then
cities
we'll be
league or
back. But
something.
there
Yeah.
is a special meeting tomorrow.
There's a
So
lot of
anyway,
meetings this week. Okay.
see you later on
All right,
Cambridge
maybe
Inside Out.
sometime. All right, bye-bye.